time for Fullest House First Edition, where we are playing Vaettiheim. It is turn 24. Happily, I remember that I wanted to do an end-of-the-year review, so we will get to that. There were definitely points at which I had forgotten that I was planning on doing that, so we get some luck. Site searching, Cypress Forest. I think that's 2 gems. I'll have to take a look. Regardless, it is better than missing. And then we catch some battles, mostly our own, but some from other people. Right, so we're attacking Bogarus with just our little group of sacreds. And it looks like he wasn't able to afford any province defense. And so these cavalry have no leaders and just rout off. Obviously, we can handle that. Again, having no forts open is really rough because you're not getting much, if any, income. And then here we are, just re-pinging the throne. Right, I forgot about this. So I'll have to go take a look and compare, but really, so no disease on this pretender. It does seem like there's a death site present on this province, but it may not be a disease site. So probably whatever was going to starve has starved away and died. But just wanted to see if anything was diseased. Realistically, we wouldn't want to wait much longer on this throne anyway, but it was more just to refresh my memory on the defenders. And then it looks like there was a battle in Abyssia between Pangaea and Arco. So this is another reason to get involved over here, because it looks like Pangaea is interested in trying to vulture the capital. We've seen, I think, most of what Pangaea is rocking. He has brought out one of his mages, a Pan, and given him some earth gems. So that is very nice, but as discussed, very light in terms of the mage support. Then again, Arco, has no mage support. So it's really just a question of can they deal with elephants? And while Grove Guard aren't fantastic in general, I think, and then of course they're not going to be able to trample. It's going to be a little harder. Actually, they're only size 3, so the elephants will still trample them decently well. But elephants have really poor defense skill, and that's one of the main issues with the Minotaur. And the Minotaur should be able to cut through their large hit point pool relatively quickly. Yeah, so we can see that the elephants go down pretty quickly. Elephants definitely can be powerful. Okay, yeah, it looks like some Strength of Giants casting here from our one mage on the field. And looks like he was just using those gems to reduce his fatigue. Completely acceptable use, reasonably efficient use of mages, right? Whereas I'm losing a ton of research by mobilizing all of those mages, which is kind of just the nature of point buffing. This is a much more efficient use, right? So he's not losing out on nearly as much research as I am. Although it does mean if you run into a mage heavy army, you might be in trouble and you might be losing quite a bit of gold. But in this case, definitely works out, much better for Pangaea than Arco, and Arco is probably in trouble here at this point. I'm not really sure what else is going on. We'll get some more scouting on them hopefully this turn, but obviously a loss like this is not good, and they did most of the lifting against Abyssia, so if they lose out on it right at the end of the war here, that's really bad news for them and good news for Pangaea. I think morally puts us in an easier position in terms of jumping in, right? We can, now we are just righting wrongs instead of being the vulture ourselves. So not that, you shouldn't worry too much about being right in Dominions, because as we've discussed, nobody's the good guy. And so this is the storm against Calum, and I am expecting a competent defense. Here's some whites, a good use of death gems early on, and some yetis, which can be nasty, especially with the cold aura, depending on what kind of resistances you have. And it looks like a good amount of casters, who have probably, looks like all been given some gems, and this looks like the Pretender, who's been given a ton of gems. So, this could be kind of nasty for Marignon. And he's got, a bit of an evocation bait squad up here, I think, that are probably just going to rush in. But otherwise, mostly it just looks like a bunch of, human infantry. Some of his sacreds here. So he's going to get at least a little bit of benefit from his bless. That's interesting. This is one of their heroes. They also get this hero in the Middle Age. Not really sure how they explain her presence in the Late Age lore-wise, but we needn't worry about that. And then, just a lone Inquisitor here, it looks like, probably just for blessing. So, can a bunch of swordsmen, deal with whatever it is that Calum has set up. Certainly, the mage support is very one-sided. And again, right, we've talked a lot about efficiency, but this is one of those situations. Yeah, there's the evocations coming out, some of which are hitting the bait squad, but some of which are hitting really kind of an anti-bird box. Oof. And like that is like one of the core issues like with fighting Calum, right, is that you kind of, is that a rout? Yeah, so a good chunk of Marignon's units have already routed. And this is probably a situation, because it looks like most, if not all of them, like, yeah, I think this is just one large squad. And that's somewhat, you know what, I think leadership might have gotten taken out. Oh, man, that's rough. You know, I was about to give a talk about, you got to split into multiple squads and blah. I mean, that's all true, right? But, like, you know, it looks like a Thunderstrike it took out the leadership square. And this, you know, this isn't a ton of leaders. And that is always a risk, you know, like if you don't bring that many leaders, you know, and obviously you don't want to bring a bunch of mages for losing out on research and being efficient, but bringing extra leaders is really useful and can help prevent situations like this. So this is a rough loss for Marignon. I actually don't think it's going to cost them like all that much. Like that hero is not very useful. And like the mage, like no big deal. Like he's pretty cheap. Yeah, right. So like if we look in terms of like actual like gold lost and such, like man, that's not too bad. And because he gets the early route, right? Like he doesn't actually lose that many swordsmen, and you know he will lose a few more in the retreat. And like in some ways, it acts as like a fairly effective gem bait, right? Because he didn't pay that much. But Calum probably did burn gems there. Let's just double check that Calum did. I can't imagine. This seems like enough stuff that I imagine the mages here will be utilizing their gems. Let's fast forward here. Yeah, right. No gem on this caster anymore. And like Calum was never that big, and so they probably don't have a ton of gems. That said, you know, other than the Pretender, who probably, did not spend all of their gems, like, you know, Calum did a good job of not just like handing out all the gems possible. So they probably have enough gems for at least one more, maybe a couple more fights like this. So like, yeah, it's kind of useful from a gem standpoint. But I mean, obviously, you know, the plan is not to have all of your leadership take a Thunderstrike. So Marignon is going to have to rethink that one, but I don't think it's going to slow them down too much in the long term. You know, we get some brigands, of course, that's fine. We find some water gems, that is very nice. And then we are, you know, sieging, right? So this is the fort that we're not really too worried about breaking down, and Bogarus is what we're really focused on. Severely damaged is good, but this could be 2 more turns. But, you know, I mean, citadels, they do take a second to crack. So some more giants would probably be useful, but we're also not doing terribly. And then we have a double elimination this turn. So Micklin, we know, was being eaten by, well, we don't know. We heard was being eaten by Raga, and Ulm being vanquished. They were on our border until recently, so we'll have to take a look. This is a little bit concerning. Not sure what happened there. However, in the good news department, we did finish research in Construction 3, moving on to 4 for like our blood searching items and some boosters, and I will catch you guys after the jump. All right, this is the situation and what we're doing about it. Another relatively quiet turn. The Siege of Bogarus continues. We did manage to get our mercenaries. We put in another bid for another mercenary group here. Not actually super familiar with these guys, but I'm thinking they're birds who, you know, usually have good siege strength. If we do storm, we'll probably send just the mercenaries in first. See if we can get, you know, relatively cheap win, or basically a free win, right, if we only lose mercenaries. And birds are extra nice, you know, especially because Bogarus is unlikely to have much chaff. You know, just some dudes in robes, and so the birds can jump in the back and mess them up before they make cast whatever they cast. Bogarus probably is summoning chaff, so yeah, there's a good chance that fails, but again, the mercenaries, it's fine. Of course, we have to break down the fortification first, so, you know, that's continuing. And then once we break that fortification, we'll move on to this one, which, yeah, we have under siege, but progressing relatively slowly. From a rating standpoint, we're mostly done, right? We have our one Azure Mage with some of our sacreds nearly in place to take over this lake, although it occurs to me that he won't be able to bless them, which isn't super necessary, but would be nice. So we might actually forge like an item so we can send one of our priests underwater to assist with that. We'll probably need another turn or two. We have the mobility boots now, so we're getting our other Azure Mage in position, and then once he picks up you know, his Rimvetti, then he will have to slow walk because yeah, Vetti are not fast. And that's really the majority, of what we're doing, other than, pushing around site searchers. And we've finished our infrastructure here in this fort. We're not building a temple here yet. We built a lab over in this forest. We're starting our preaching, right? Hoping to get another dryad. That would be cool. We'll see. We want to get a temple in here, but until we kill Bogarus, there's enough candles in this area that, it's going to be hard for us to get dominion spread in these provinces. And we're going to, build another lab in this forest, do our foreign recruiting of our mages. We're starting a fort in this cave. I was kind of on the fence. I mean, it's a decent province. Again, I'm coming from playing a lot of early age, so like this actually looks pretty good to me. For late age, it's not great, right? Like, there's plenty of other provinces that are better from just a pure like recruitment standpoint. But it can be useful to have like a lab in a cave. There's certain spells that require being in a cave. I'm not sure if we have easy access. A lot of them are earth, and we don't have a ton of earth access. But it's a nice thing to have in the back pocket. And then, of course, the game is just demanding that I recruit enchantresses this game. And who am I to argue? So, we're going to get some more enchantresses out. And it has a lot of connections. It's right on the border, which I don't love, but this is a relatively peaceful border, so we should be able to get away with getting it up. And then, in the future, it's going to help prevent attacks, from at least one of our neighbors, and, provide us a decent springboard, especially potentially to come after this throne. We already have infrastructure close. So anyway, and I think, there's Zots here as well, which we don't really so much need this, but we have it. So anyway, putting a fort up there, definitely somewhat questionable. Speaking of enchantresses, we did manage to push out an enchantress, and it's just 4 turns is brutal. So we're going back to the hags, because of course we're building that other fort. Happily, our first enchantress, wasn't the best possible, randoms, but she did come with a single earth. That is the only earth in our nation currently, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, she should be site searching. Let's see, this turn hasn't rolled yet, so let's go ahead and change that. But yeah, she's just going to tool around and site search. We're hoping to get a few more ladies like this to get us deeper into earth. The other random that we're quite interested in is fire, and then our patrol group is about to arrive, so we should kick off our blood hunting next turn, and we're about to have the research we need for the blood hunting booster, I guess you'd call it. The sanguine dowsing rod, I think, is the actual name. So yeah, our blood hunting is definitely getting not a super late start. I don't know. I don't play a lot of blood. I've heard that turn 18 you should be getting a good amount of blood slaves, and we are getting none at turn 24. So certainly it's not ideal, but it could be later. And then, full mage recruitment, only our sacred recruitment troop-wise. So yeah, we're going to invest a little more in infrastructure, but then we will probably ramp up into troop production once we finish taking Bogarus's holdings, and then we'll probably eliminate this throne next, and then we'll probably go north. I still haven't fully decided and, need to talk to players, but, of course, we've seen how Pangea's moved in. Arco's armies, or at least the one army that we've seen, wasn't too impressive. And again, that may be just because they're trying to be efficient, but maybe also they don't have great mage use or they don't have great research. And we know that Pangea is relatively small and, haven't been super impressed with their bless. Also, Pangea borders somebody that we're friendly with who, well, hopefully, right, is about to finish out this war against Caleb, and we'll probably be looking for another target, and that may mean it's a capital for him, a capital for me, everybody's happy. It should be a relatively easy war. I think keeping your friends happy is important. Keeping large, powerful neighbors happy is important. So I think that, there's a lot of good things to be said about this. It's also relatively close, right, to our pre-existing infrastructure where we have a decent amount of mages built up, not too far from our capital. So in a lot of ways, I think, this is kind of the war that makes most sense for us. We'll also probably pick up a throne out of it, which would be nice. And it would give us a slightly larger border with Raga, it looks like, which, we're a little bit worried about them getting out of control and wouldn't mind putting a little pressure on them. Also, in terms of, right, the other big option was Gath. Gath is actually looking relatively large. So, I don't know why it's taking them so long to finish out this Patala situation. They did mention they were busy with other things, and it doesn't appear that they have been idle. So, while it's a little curious, right, that like still nothing is going on here, and obviously Patala is in a very weak position, and, we always like to pick up capitals, it does look like this would be a tougher fight for us, probably. So we're going to continue to scout and keep eyes. Also in the interesting department, well, I guess before we talk about Raga, we know what Utgard has been up to now, right? Because Alma's dead, and we see a bunch of Utgard's flags here. So yeah, I somehow missed that they were fighting. Again, like we need to increase our scouting network. And like Utgard is another, possible option for us for a war, right? Because we share like a pretty substantial border. And there's also a throne right on the border. But like, conversely, like we don't have as much infrastructure over here. Once we take Bogarus's, sure, like then we'll have some infrastructure close, but we won't really have mages built up. That's another reason that like going after Gath is kind of even in a worse spot in terms of like our infrastructure positioning. Like it's not awful. It's totally workable. But it definitely will be more of a stretch. But anyway, yeah, Utgard, was able to take out like relatively quickly, so it's like, yeah, okay, they're probably, we know they don't extend a ton to the south, but they probably have like a pretty solid shape and are a good size. So I think that would also be a tougher war. And then speaking of Raga, it's kind of interesting. Looks like these provinces have been cut off. So they are possibly already fighting Gath and maybe already fighting Utgard as well. So we're scouting here with some of our Wolf Brother groups. But I'll probably reach out to these players and see like, so what's the deal like with Raga? Are you guys fighting? And we may just try to snipe these provinces. We'll have to be careful. Like this is one of his sacreds, and even though it's only a single Zayedin, that could definitely be enough to ruin the day of like what are 10 or 12 Wolf Brothers. Yeah, 10 Wolf Brothers. So anyway, we'll see. Not sure if we want to antagonize Raga just yet, but it is food for thought. And yeah, now let's do a tour of the F keys, since it is the start of the second year, or I guess more accurately, year 2, which will be the third year of play. So we are currently sitting at 28 provinces, which I think is probably the best that I've done so far, certainly in any full house game for this point in the game. We're not insanely big, but we're not small. Some of those provinces, 2 of them, right, like Bogarus, we own the province but not the fort, so slight asterisk there. Our site searching overall has been pretty good, I would say, although relatively low, right? A lot of ones here, but for our national paths, other than Astral, notable exception in Astral, we have done almost no Astral searching. I will probably be using the remote Astral site searching. We'll take a look at our research, but I think we've got a little bit of evocation queued up just specifically for that remote site searching spell. A lot of Bogarus's lands that we've taken, right, we haven't managed to search yet, and like, yeah, we'll probably do a decent amount of searching. We definitely saw that he had some mages out, probably site searching, but I'll have to take a look. I'm sure there's some magic paths that we get that Bogarus does not. Obviously, like our site luck has been kind of insane in terms of foreign recruitable mages. Our non-national searching has not been great. We did get that one air mage, and we just got an earth mage up. Part of the problem is we haven't built forts on top of the foreign recruit mages. And then, of course, like, yeah, there's no resources in this site. Again, I think these witches are going to be more useful for us later on for this air death cross path. We don't have the research really to take advantage of them yet. It is a random, right? Only 25% of them are going to get that air that we're really looking for. So we are going to need to, recruit a decent amount of them, but I do think we can afford to wait a little bit longer before we invest in them. And then, of course, the sorceresses we should be getting up relatively soon, so hopefully we'll get some more fire site searching and some earth site searching here. And then let's take a quick look at the graphs. These aren't going to be super interesting since we don't have other people's graphs, but sometimes looking at your own graphs can be instructive. You can definitely see that there's a long period here where we were preparing to attack Bogarus that we had absolutely no movement at all in terms of our province growth. But since then, obviously the war's gone pretty well for us, so we've grown substantially, really basically like doubled in size almost. This is probably one of the first wars where I think, yeah, we got all of Bogarus's territory. I don't think anyone vultured anything from us. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact, right, that we were able to, pull off our goblining. So people just didn't really have a lot of time to react and vulture. So we were able to raid really effectively and take Bogarus's provinces really quickly, very early in the war. And yeah, I think that's reflected in the province graph in terms of forts. Like, yeah, we took a fort, we built some forts, and not particularly interesting. Income, this big dip is that darkness event. Like, otherwise, more or less tracks like with our provinces. This might actually start to change a little bit as we start to blood hunt. Like, our provinces may go up, but like our income hopefully won't go down, but may start to level off a bit more, even when our provinces are going up as we destroy provinces, blood hunting them. Gem income-wise, pretty good overall, right? Definitely some flat spots here, but overall headed in the right direction. Like, especially lately, we must have been pushing out more site searchers, or maybe just getting more lucky. Obviously, there's going to be a fair amount of deviation there. And then, like, yeah, research-wise, overall going decently. You can see, right, this is probably when we mobilized like a bunch of our cap-only mages. So, I mean, our research is definitely taking some hits from this war, but, is starting to pick back up, so that's good. And then I feel like our Dominion, is not in a great place, actually. Like, that's another reason. I'm not sure. I'm concerned that throne is the throne of death. We'll see. But it would be nice to claim a throne to try to help get some Dominion push. Because, like, yeah, we've basically been flat. So, we may need some more temples. We do have, like, 2 thrones from Marignan relatively close on our border. So we are getting pushed somewhat hard right now by Dominion. This doesn't really matter too much at the moment, but yeah, there's a lot of late game reasons that you do not want enemy Dominion in your territory if you can avoid it. Army size is in pretty good shape. We definitely took some losses against Bogarus, but never to the point where we weren't able to recruit more than we were losing. So yeah, that looks relatively healthy. And then yeah, some people have thrones. We have none. I think that covers graphs. The Hall of Fame. Not particularly relevant, although it does look like Lemuria maybe went for kind of more of a thug strategy, which I know that you can do as Lemuria. Because we see a couple of his thugs up there who are, of course, dead. So, for whatever reason, it didn't work out against the Tis, or, maybe they just died leading troops and it wasn't actually a thug strategy. That definitely is a lot of kills to be getting if you're just leading the troops. Otherwise, we see some elves, of course, one of Gath's. This looks like it might just be a regular commander. So we don't actually have anyone too impressive looking in here yet, but it's still relatively early, I feel like, for super combatant strategies. Although, with the right pretender, certainly you could have one up by this point. No problem. And now for Pretenders of the World. Most people are still in it, but we do have, 3 officially defeated nations. We also have 2 nations that are AI. So, we know about Abyssia's situation. It's looking like, things aren't going well for Xibalba either. Notably, Bogarus still taking turns, so much respect to that player. And here's where our research is at. 314 at this point. It doesn't feel great. It's not bad. But we've talked at length, about, we've mobilized a lot of mages right now. We have mages sitting on top of forts, which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, probably could afford at this point to move some of those mages off. Probably may update this turn, or maybe we'll wait till next turn. Still not 100% sure what Bogarus has in their capital, and I do think it's always risky, to just underestimate your opponent, right? Bogarus is still taking turns, so we'll see. Maybe we'll leave those mages in place. But yeah, our research a little less split than normal, I think, although, we're working on splitting it. I do think that Alteration 5 was a bit of a mistake. Wooden Warriors is nice for us, but obviously we can't really take advantage of getting the research for Mother Oak so early. So in that sense, it was a bit of a waste. Getting construction 4 earlier probably would have been better. But yeah, overall, I think our research is in an okay place and has been okay so far in the game. There are no global enchantments yet currently. And this is our, gem stocks and gem income. We have a lot of astral pearls stacked up. And we haven't really searched that much in astral. I'm not really sure why we have so much astral. So that's interesting. Definitely will be useful later in the game. We have enough astral magic that we can certainly take advantage of this. We don't have any fire income or any fire gems. That's kind of a feature of the nation. We do have some earth gems. We don't yet have any earth income. And then we've talked about our blood hunting situation. We've spent a decent amount of nature gems, but yeah, overall our income I think is decent. This is kind of hard for me to judge, again, coming from early age. I'm just, right, it's is this good for late age? Is it awful? Is it average? I'm not really sure yet, so, this is what it is. I will say we're a little low in terms of water gems, just considering where our other like national paths are. So, maybe just something to consider, that maybe we'll have to search a little harder for water, or we just ended up with, not that many water sites. And here's our magic item treasury, just the one item that we received from an event. And this is probably a good thing. Like I said, I do think I have a tendency to forge too many items, so trying to cut back on that. We're also not really like a forging nation, since basically there's a complete lack of earth, so hammers is not so much a thing for us. We definitely will do some forging. I think hammerless forging is fine, and we probably will eventually get a few hammers. And then, and of course, like, we're not a forging nation, but we do have the steel ovens, so like, yeah, probably should do a little forging. Here I am trying to forge less, and the game's like, but steel ovens. And of course, no one is close to a victory yet. This being a full house game, we have about 6 more years of game time to go before Cataclysm kicks in. And nobody's close to the 16 points. We do see Raga has a throne, and then Erythea, however you say it, they have a throne. And Marignon has a throne. We know that Marignon has another throne, they just haven't claimed it for whatever reason. So probably a few of these thrones are in other people's hands, they just haven't claimed them. So yeah, I think that covers sort of the game state review, and I think that also covers turn 24.